Uh, how do I know it's recording or not?
It said recording has started.
Okay, hold. Hello, my name is Madison. I'm going to be your therapist for today. What is your name again? And what do you go?
My name is Amanda.
So I don't know. I did your intake a couple weeks ago. Do you remember about that?
Yeah, a little bit.
So this will be your first session with me, really. So we're just gonna go over what brought you to therapy, and then we're gonna go over your mood, how you have been this past week. We're gonna identify the problems that you stated earlier. We're also gonna go over that little homework that I gave you a couple weeks ago. And then we're also going to go over CBT, which I mentioned last week. And I'm going to explain it more into full so we can kind of focus in on how we can use that to help you. Does that sound okay?
Okay, yeah, I think that'll be good.
So before we start, we're just going to go over our confidentiality statement. Just to let you know, everything that you say will stay between me and you. Some exceptions, though, are if I hear about you wanting to harm yourself, like suicidal thoughts, and you want to act on those thoughts, I may have to report those to somebody else or contact somebody. Also, if there's any abuse, like elder abuse or child abuse, I do also have to report those as I am a mandated reporter. Do you have any questions or concerns?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So can you just tell me a little bit about what brought you here?
So basically, I'm a nursing student, and I've just been just having a lot of anxiety. I kind of felt a little depressed. I'm not sure if it's because of my anxiety or if it's like another thing. Um, I had a panic attack before a checkoff on a blood pressure test, and so I failed the test, and yeah, it just kind of affected my schoolwork. It affected a nursing test, and I said I can redo it, but it's gonna be for a lower grade, and I just had a hard time really just sleeping and eating after that kind of happened, and so I just kind of gotten a lot of severe anxiety symptoms, thinking that like, oh no, I can't be a nurse anymore, or so it's just I just been crying a lot. I just feel like there's just this emptiness inside of me when it comes to going to nursing school. Panic attacks. I've just been shaking a lot when I walk into like the classroom, especially if it's for my nursing classes or even just kind of walking past the nursing building on my campus.
Is this like the first time you've had those thoughts after that test, or did you deal with this last year at all?
I've kind of always had anxiety towards it, but just recently, I'm a sophomore, so I've kind of taken more harder classes, so I've kind of noticed that like my increase in anxiety and all that has definitely increased over the past few weeks.
Yeah, that sounds really hard. I'm sorry that you're going through all that. I know nursing school is definitely a really long road. I think you're very brave for going into it. Um, so would you say this past week or so, would you say on a scale of 1 to 10, how has your anxiety been? Like 1 being really low and 10 being like high to a point where you're having attacks like all the time.
I feel like it's just kind of been like an 8.5. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's pretty high.
Yeah,
Have you, sorry,
it's
you
been
can,
a lot.
have you found anything to like help at all? Found any coping mechanisms that seem to work for you right now?
Um, I've actually, well, to cope, I kind of been starting to do a little bit of self-harm a little bit. I don't have any suicidal thoughts though. Um,
So more of like a mechanism than an
yeah,
action. Okay.
and I'm just afraid to like tell somebody that I've kind of been doing it because I feel like they're just gonna put me on alert after alerts, and I don't want to get kicked out of the program. Um, and yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That would be a definite problem that would probably go through your mind. I will say, from my experience, usually that's typically not the case. I don't think you'd get kicked out or anything. And a lot of people, you would find that they do want to support you and all that. And we can try to figure out throughout the session who maybe you could possibly reach out to for extra support if you would like. Just so you'd have somebody like with you. Do you have any friends or anything in the dorm
Um,
or in classes?
I just kind of have like a small friend group. It's kind of relatively small. I've kind of been having trouble making friends.
Mhm.
I kind of worry about letting them in just because of my anxiety and just the stress levels I've been having with nursing and yeah.
So we are going to set some goals for this session if that's okay. I think definitely one of our main goals is going to be focusing on maybe what causes you to relate and go back to that self-harm. And then also if we can figure out the root to your panic attacks, because that is the trigger to your self-harming. I think those are the two things that we want to focus on first. Does that sound like okay, or do you want to add another goal?
Um, no, those are pretty good goals.
Okay. So do you remember your homework from last week? It was just really basic. I just wanted you to write down what was happening when you were feeling really anxious. Did you happen to notice any moments or places that was more anxious than others?
Um, Yeah, can I give me a second and let me get my notes out that I have on my phone? I wrote these down on my notes so that way I have better recollection and I can kind of like write my homework on this app to kind of track my progress for myself, kind of how you said that would be good in our last in my intake session. So just give me one second here. Um, so my homework was to identify the time of day that I felt worse and write down in the moment what was happening and to take 5 deep breaths before you do anything else. Was that what my homework was?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So I did kind of write that down. Um, I kind of noticed like when I walk in the dorm, when there was no one in the dorm, and I had just gotten back from class. We kind of did this on Wednesday. I figured it was good to do it in the middle of the week, kind of when it's kind of more intense and I'm thinking about, my test days and how I did after the tests. So I did it when I just gotten back to class and I did what you said. I did the 5 deep breaths, but then the anxiety kind of creeped back up and um, I kind of self harmed a little. And so I wouldn't say that was necessarily when, but I kind of did reach out to my RA for support.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad you did that. Did
Mhm.
she have any, I know they are usually pretty well, have a good relationship with the therapy staff. Did you mention that you were in therapy to her?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
Mhm.
so that's good that she's aware. Yeah, and I know we do help with the RA training, so I know that they know what to do. And I know that I trust that you can always go to her if you ever have any problems, maybe whether that be late at night or just if you want to talk to someone. I know that they really do want to support their students. Does she seem like someone that you could possibly go to if you feel like really overwhelmed?
Yeah, she kind of is. They actually had a lot of mental health training, and so she was just like, "Are you seeing a therapist?" And then she kind of connected me to the dean a little bit, and then they kind of also referred to me over to the student success and retention services, so that way I have someone holding me accountable for my academic success here at the college that I'm going to.
Yeah. That sounds like some good support systems, and we can always go back and talk about some other ones if you would like. So I did want to talk about with you today CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy. Have you heard of that before?
Um, Kind of. I just know it's just a type of technique that therapists use for just helping their clients or patients cope with what they're going through.
Yeah. So it really it kind of goes in a cycle. It involves three main points, which is your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So usually what happens is somebody will have a thought that may come up, just any kind of reoccurrent thought, and that thought could make you feel a certain way, whether it be sappy, sad, happy, angry, and then due to that, you would usually elicit a behavior. So in your case, we want to really try to work on getting out that behavior of self-harm because that is your preferred behavior at the moment. So we really need to figure out what that initial thought is that causes that feeling to lead that to that
Um,
behavior. Does that make sense?
yeah, it kind of does, and you explained it really well.
So just to help you out, I do have a worksheet we're just going to go through so that you can kind of see um, how it works. So I'm just going to
Okay,
ask you a couple of questions, and I just want you to
okay.
think of maybe let's focus on what happened, a situation that happened earlier this week that you said that you self-harmed a little bit. So do you remember what was the situation at that moment? Like what was the initial like environment?
I started to panic because of having these feelings and thoughts that I couldn't do the homework for the class, and then it kind of made me feel like, oh, I'll fail my class, and then it kind of led to the behavior of self harm.
Okay. So we're going to break that up a little bit. So would you say where were you in that moment
I was kind of at my desk in my dorm.
in your desk? Okay. What was the initial thought?
Um, I guess it was just I have to get this homework done or else I'll fail the class and I won't be a successful nurse. Or if I don't do this homework, it was just basically putting a lot of pressure on myself to do the homework, which led to the oh no, if I fail this, I fail the class and I fail being a nurse.
So, what you're describing is what we call cognitive distortions. So, your initial cognitive distortion of what you were thinking was, oh, I can't do this homework. And because of that, I'm a failure. Is that correct?
Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah. So, that is a cognitive distortion, which a cognitive distortion is just maybe like an exaggeration of something you're thinking. Because you've probably
Oh,
heard all your classmates say, oh, I'm going to be a failure, and they pass the test, right?
yeah, a lot of them sometimes do.
Yeah, so it's a pretty common reoccurrence in a lot of people's thoughts. So we really want to see if we can change that cognitive distortion to a more positive or a more general expression. So after you had that initial thought, which was that you couldn't do the homework, that it was really hard, or whatever you were initially thinking, the next part is to identifying the cognitive distortion, which for your case, it would be probably catastrophizing. Have you ever heard of like someone being like, oh, it's just such a catastrophe when something happens?
Kind of,
Well,
yeah.
kind of labeling yourself as a failure, which is
Yeah.
something to keep in mind of. Um, so do you think What makes you, do you have any like evidence to think of maybe the thought is true?
Um, I mean, um, I don't know, like if I really don't do my homework, it's gonna affect my homework grade in the class. And depending on if I do how well I do on the other stuff, I can fail the class.
Do you think there's other ways that you could probably, like, let's say that were to happen. Let's say you don't do the homework. What do
Okay.
you think would happen to your grade?
If I don't do the homework?
Yeah, just that one homework. Like, do you
If I
think
don't
you're
do that one homework, it'll just drag my grade really, really down.
would talking to the professor about like what you're going through and maybe getting an extension be an option?
Um, Maybe, but they're kind of very strict here with the nursing program.
Yeah, that makes sense. So
Yeah.
what, so is there a reason why this particular homework was hard for you? Was it like the content or just the motivation?
Um, it was just the motivation, I guess, of just how I failed like the past test and all that. And how I failed, yeah, just how my test scores have been.
Yeah. So is there maybe a thought that you could think of that would help you think of it as not being true? That you're not a failure?
Um, Kind of just knowing where to ask for support, maybe. Like going to see the tutor, talking to my professor, reevaluating how I learn, kind of, maybe.
Yeah. What's another way you could look at this situation?
Um, hmm. Another situation is that if I fail, uh, hmm. You like how I think about the homework assignments?
Yeah.
I guess it could be that homework is to kind of help me evaluate what I understand and what I don't understand. So like it's okay if I don't do well on the homework. I can just reassess kind of how I stated before. It's a sign that I need help and it's okay to ask for help when it comes to like tutoring.
Yeah, that was very good. I think that's very realistic. What's the best that could happen out of
When I
this
do my
situation?
homework assignments, I get it right and I don't actually know what I'm doing. And so that can boost my confidence in my nursing abilities and also help with the testing and all of that.
Yeah, I think that would be a good thing. There's always like a lot of people think of the what ifs, which is another cognitive distortion, like, oh, what if I fail this? What if I don't pass? What if I get
Yeah.
kicked out? And usually those are all a cognitive distortion, so it's not necessarily true. You just have to kind of figure out a good way to reward it so that you can get your mind in a better place. So, what would happen if maybe you were to change your thinking over that thought? Do you think you'd feel a little better maybe?
I probably would feel a little bit better, maybe, actually. And I would probably feel like that I could do the homework and that it's okay. I'm making progress no matter what I do.
So, say if your friend were to say that exact same thing to you, if you go into class and you hear someone say, "Oh, I'm going to fail this test and then I'm going to drop out of the program." What would you maybe tell that person?
I would maybe tell, like, if you fail, like, go talk to the professor, go meet with them during their office hours. We can study together. We can kind of talk about it, or maybe go to the professor together, book a study room, and just teach each other it.
Mhm. That was very good. How do you feel about that?
I kind of feel good. I'm still a little anxious that like that doesn't may always not happen. I may not be able to meet with somebody. Somebody may not be willing to do that. But
Hmm.
it's it it seems to kind of make sense.
Yeah, and I think a lot of professors, if you do go to links to like get help and it's not available, they will be able to work with you. I think you just have to trust them as much as you trust yourself, and at least reach it
Okay.
out once, maybe if there's something that you're really struggling with. They don't want to
Yeah.
see they don't want to see you drop the program. Most of them do want to help you succeed. The program is hard. It is meant to stretch you, and that's
Yeah.
typically a bad thing. So, what would you say is the hardest aspect for you to get out of this anxiety for you right now?
Kind of just changing my thought process about it, like kind of reevaluating my anxious thoughts.
Is there anything that makes you hesitant to do that?
Um, I'm kind of just a little bit nervous just to reach out sometimes because I don't want people to judge me for how I'm feeling or yeah.
Hmm. So, what would you say are maybe some advantages of you changing your thought process?
It might make me feel better about going to my classes. It might make me feel better of how successful I'll be as a nurse.
Do you think another advantage might be helping you feel better so you're not so anxious, maybe a little bit?
Yeah, I guess that could work.
Can you think of any disadvantages? And it might
Disadvantages?
not changing your thought process. Like, what happens if you were to just keep going the way you're going? What do you think would happen?
It would just get to a point where I give up on my goals and I would lose the motivation of what I'm passionate about.
Yeah. So I think one thing that really is going to help you is really aiming towards your goals. You do want to be a nurse, and it's a really valuable field. Um, have you? So is there anything else about the cognitive distortions you have a question about or anything?
Um, I don't really think so.
Okay. So for our homework for you this week, we're gonna just I'm just gonna go through about it because it's kind of complicated. And then we're
Okay.
gonna just so you understand it. But have you ever heard of a thought record before?
No, I haven't.
So a thought record is a good way. It's kind of like a larger part of what you did for your homework last week. How last week you're really just supposed to write down the simple like situation where you were at the time. The thought record is really gonna like break that each situation down one by one.
Okay.
So just because you think something, it doesn't mean that it's true, which is kind of like what the thought record is trying to help
Hmm.
you. So we're gonna just go through one situation that maybe you had last week, so you know how to do it for the next week. So is there a situation maybe that you thought about that was like one situation that you can think of that maybe there was an unpleasant emotion, like an
Yeah,
event?
kind of when I went into my class on Monday.
I'm sorry.
When I went into my class on Monday,
Okay, so the situation was you went into class, and what was the emotion you were feeling maybe when you walked into that class?
stressed and nervous.
Stressed and nervous. Was there any physical signs or just internal signs?
I guess that like I was kind of shaking and like I kind of was like blinking a lot and like
Hmm.
almost blinking to like not cry.
Okay. Well, did you have any automatic thoughts when you walked in, or even when you sat down and maybe the class had just started?
Yeah, I was like, I'm not gonna remember this material the next time I take the class, so why even bother showing up today?
Okay. How much did you believe that thought?
I believed it a lot.
On a scale of like a 0 to 100, how much do you think you believed that in the moment?
Probably like a 98 to be honest.
98? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you felt anxious and stressed during the class, right? How
yeah.
intense was that emotion?
It was pretty intense for me just because of how my previous test scores were.
Yeah. So what cognitive distortion do you think that the class was telling you in that moment?
Probably what you said before, catastrophizing.
Yeah. So like, what's the point of taking notes?
Yeah, I mean, is there other ones that I could have had?
Yeah, so there's labeling. Do you ever call yourself a failure? It's okay if you,
Sometimes I do. Yeah,
yeah,
sometimes I do.
yeah, but you probably don't have any evidence towards that, right?
No, just kind of internal, like my thought process of saying I'm a failure because I failed this test.
Mm-hmm. There's also like overgeneralizing the situation, which is pretty common. It's just saying that like you're just overthinking what's about to happen. Like when you said
Okay.
that you don't want there's no point of taking notes or anything or being there because you're not going to pass the class. That's
Yeah.
more, that can also be with labeling, but also be like an overgeneralization, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So I would put, for that one, we could put catastrophizing,
Okay.
overgeneralizing, and labeling. So how much do you think, kind of like over that 0 to 100%, how much did you believe those thoughts as well?
I'm kind of like 98.
98.
Yeah.
So what is maybe, so we have the negative thoughts, correct? So what do you
Mm-hmm.
think is a positive that we can do for each thought? So the first thought is I'm a failure. So what do you think would
Mm-hmm.
be the opposite?
I'm not a failure. Failure is progress. So I'm making an attempt when I fail to know what I can do the next time.
Yeah, that's good. So for the second one, you walk into class, you see the board, you see the professor, and you think, I don't deserve to be here. I don't want to be here. What's the opposite?
Um, if if it came to me, that kind of means I can get through it.
Yeah. Would you say maybe like you deserve to be there as much as everyone else? Is
Yeah.
that you could say there? Because you got into that program just to like everyone else.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like I am a sophomore, so it's like obviously they think that I can do it. Otherwise they wouldn't have let me in the program.
Yeah. And then finally, you're gonna fail that class because the notes and stuff is too hard.
Yeah.
So would you say, what do you think could be another way to look at that?
I'm not gonna fail if I ask
Yeah.
for help.
Yeah, you're not gonna fail. You have multiple ways of getting through the class. Could definitely be one. So now that we've gone through that, what do you think an outcome would be for you? So let's say now that you've gone through that situation, how do you feel about each thought now? The original thought that you're a failure.
I kind of feel like I'm not so much failing as much as I think I am. That I
Mm.
can get through this and we'll get through this.
What emotion do you feel right now in the moment?
I kind of feel more positive, hopeful.
Positive? Yeah. What would be something that you could do maybe this week to maybe help remind you of that?
Kind of just positive self-talk.
Yeah. So positive self-talk is one thing good. I know some people, even I do this, will just put like a sticky note that says, I can do this before class. You can just stick it on your laptop. Does that sound like
Oh,
something
okay.
maybe you're trying this week?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's really great that you kind of told me that you do that too. It kind of makes me feel like it's a normal thing that everybody goes through.
Yeah, I think positive self-talk is a really good way to really increase positivity, but also just kind of increase your mood as you see it. Because like no one wants to see like a
Yeah.
fail. Like you wouldn't want to put, oh, I'm a failure on your laptop, right?
Yeah. No.
So, do you think the thought record is something you'd be able to do this week?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay if you can't like answer every question or if you leave anything blank, we can go through it the next week.
Okay.
But yeah, I just want you to try to do like two situations maybe. and you can go through
Okay.
that process. And I'll give you the list of cognitive distortions as well, so you can kind of keep an eye out for it and see what is going to come of the next time. Do you have any
Okay.
other questions about your homework or anything?
No, not really.
Okay. So now that we reviewed CBT and stuff, do you think the CBT is something that you could possibly do? Maybe something that we could possibly work on the next few weeks so we can kind of wean out that behaviors?
Mm, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So before we're gonna focus a little bit on your self-harm for right now, because I think we really need to talk about that before we leave today. Um, do you have any before you self-harm, did you do anything to help you get through those anxious moments, or is this like a new thing?
It's kind of a new thing.
Yeah. What do you think you would like to see from me? What do you think would be the most useful that you could try?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What is something, have you heard of anything that might help you try to curb those urges and thoughts?
I kind of heard exercise.
Yeah, some people do exercise. Do you find that you have, so when you go back from class, do you normally just go straight to your dorm?
Yeah, I kind of do.
Is that maybe where the issue lies a little bit?
Yeah, maybe. I think so.
Do you, um, how would you feel about maybe like walking like, I don't know, maybe like a loop around campus before you go back to your dorm?
Maybe that might help.
Instead of going straight to your dorm, maybe after class, you just make a loop. You can maybe remind yourself of some of those things that we talked about today.
Yeah.
Um, and then if you really don't think that you can do that and you feel like you will self-harm, I do want you to call somebody instead of doing it.
Okay.
Whether
Okay.
that be your RA, you could call me, you could call really anyone on campus I feel like would be willing to help you out.
Yeah.
Have to talk to your friend right now if you don't really want to. I know we can probably help gain some support in the coming weeks for it. I definitely don't want you to be alone. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That does make sense.
So, is there anything else you would like to talk about today?
Um, I don't think so.
No? Okay, so to just summarize what we've done today, we have identified your problem that we really want to work on as really changing those thoughts so we can hopefully change your behavior, which
Mm-hmm.
right now was self-harming. We set our goals. Um, we talked about our thought journals and we reviewed CBT. Is there anything else you'd like to add or talk about before we leave for today?
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about like if I tell you I'm having suicidal thoughts, like do I just automatically go into the psych ward or is it kind of like depending on the severity of those
So
thoughts?
that's a good question. It really just depends on the severity of thoughts, how active you are. So right now, for you with your self-harm, that's more what we call like non-suicidal self-harm. So you just kind of use it as a coping mechanism. But sometimes that can lead to suicidal thoughts. Have you had any of those thoughts before, or are you just like hypothetical?
I'm
It's
just
okay.
thinking I'm just thinking like hypothetical wise. I don't have any of them right now and I have a lot of people checking in on me, but it's just like I've just heard a lot of negative stuff about psych wards, but then I also heard some positive, so it's like I'm kind of scared that if I tell you I'm having suicidal thoughts, you're just gonna be like, okay, pack up your stuff and go into the psych
No, I
ward.
won't do that. It really depends on every case is different. It would also be really like a lot of the decision making will be up to you and what you think is best for yourself. You
Okay.
being of age in college, we can't like force you to go anywhere. Um,
Huh.
we would have to I think we do have an emergency contact the university has that we would call, but other than that, we can't
Yeah.
force you into anything you don't
Okay.
want to do.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
So I think we will end our session for today. Do you
Okay.
have any other questions or anything before you come back next week?
No, I don't think so.
So can you remind me of what you're going to work on?
The thought process journal?
Yep. And what
Okay.
else do you think is an idea that you might do?
Write down stuff?
Yeah, maybe that sticky note we talked about.
Yeah.
All right. If you need anything, you can always call me. And
Okay.
I'll see you next week.
Okay, sounds good.